I Love Lucy wasn't just a sitcom. It was one of the most important television shows ever created. During the 1950s, millions of Americans gathered around their televisions every week to watch Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz turn ordinary married life into comedy history. On screen, Lucy and Ricky Ricardo looked energetic, glamorous, and deeply in love. The chemistry felt effortless, the laughter felt genuine, and the show quickly became the gold standard for television comedy. But behind the bright studio lights and iconic laugh track, the reality surrounding I Love Lucy was often far darker than audiences ever imagined. Hidden behind the comedy were explosive arguments, heartbreaking betrayals, dangerous health scares, and industry secrets Hollywood worked desperately to keep buried. These are 7 I Love Lucy secrets Hollywood tried to hide. One of the biggest secrets behind the success of I Love Lucy was that the marriage between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz was far more unstable than audiences realized. On television, Ricky and Lucy looked playful and affectionate, creating the image of the perfect couple. But behind the scenes, the real relationship between Ball and Arnaz was reportedly filled with constant emotional tension. Desi's demanding career, frequent touring, and rumored affairs created enormous strain on the marriage almost from the very beginning. Lucille Ball reportedly struggled deeply with jealousy and insecurity, especially as stories about Desi's behavior with other women followed him throughout Hollywood nightlife circles. According to people close to the production, there were periods when the couple barely spoke off camera, except while filming scenes together. Yet despite the growing cracks in their marriage, both stars continued performing as if everything was perfectly fine because they understood their relationship had become part of the show's brand. The public wasn't simply watching a sitcom. They were emotionally invested in Lucy and Desi as a real-life love story. Hollywood feared the illusion would collapse if audiences discovered how troubled the marriage truly was. Another major secret involved the shocking level of control Desi Arnaz reportedly held behind the scenes. While Lucille Ball became the public face of the series, Desi was quietly building one of the most powerful television empires in America. Through their company Desilu Productions, Arnaz revolutionized television production methods and became an incredibly influential businessman. But according to many stories from cast and crew members, Desi could also become extremely demanding and intimidating when protecting the show. Staff reportedly feared his temper during stressful productions, especially when technical problems or scheduling issues threatened filming. Arnaz expected perfection because he understood the enormous financial pressure surrounding the series. Some insiders later claimed the atmosphere behind the scenes could become tense and exhausting despite the cheerful comedy happening on camera. Hollywood preferred presenting Desi as the charming bandleader husband, not the fiercely controlling executive who aggressively managed one of television's biggest productions. One of the most emotionally difficult secrets connected to the show involved Lucille Ball's private fear that audiences might reject her pregnancy. During the early 1950s, network television still operated under extremely conservative standards. Even the word pregnant was considered controversial for primetime television. When Lucille Ball became pregnant in real life, network executives panicked about how audiences might react if a visibly pregnant woman appeared on television. Some executives feared family audiences would find it inappropriate or scandalous. Behind the scenes, there were intense discussions about hiding the pregnancy entirely or temporarily pausing production. But Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz fought aggressively to include the pregnancy in the storyline because they believed married couples having children should not be treated as taboo. Eventually, the show introduced Lucy Ricardo's pregnancy using carefully approved language and strict censorship rules. Ironically, the episode where Lucy gave birth became one of the most watched television broadcasts in American history. But at the time, Hollywood executives genuinely feared the storyline could destroy the show's wholesome image. Another hidden truth involved the enormous physical pressure Lucille Ball placed on herself during filming. While audiences saw endless energy and flawless comedic timing, Ball was reportedly exhausting herself behind the scenes, trying to maintain perfection. Physical comedy became her trademark, but many of her most famous scenes were incredibly demanding and sometimes dangerous to film. Whether stomping grapes, falling over furniture, or performing elaborate slapstick routines, Ball pushed her body far harder than many viewers realized. Crew members later describe her as intensely perfectionistic, often rehearsing scenes repeatedly until every movement felt exactly right. Long filming schedules, studio pressure, and the responsibility of carrying America's biggest sitcom created enormous stress. Yet Ball rarely allowed audiences to see exhaustion or vulnerability publicly because Hollywood expected female stars to appear endlessly cheerful and glamorous. Behind the laughter, she was reportedly operating under constant pressure to protect both the show and her career. One of Hollywood's most carefully guarded secrets involved rumors surrounding Desi Arnaz's behavior away from the studio. For decades, stories circulated about heavy drinking, gambling, and affairs during the height of I Love Lucy's success. While many rumors were difficult to fully verify, the emotional impact on Lucille Ball reportedly became impossible to hide privately. Friends later described periods where Ball felt emotionally devastated by the instability inside the marriage. Yet the studio worked aggressively to shield both stars from scandal coverage because I Love Lucy had become far too valuable financially and culturally to risk damaging the public image of America's favorite television couple. In many ways, Lucy and Desi became trapped inside the fantasy they created for viewers. The happier and more successful the show became, the harder it became for either of them to publicly acknowledge the growing problems in their personal lives. Another secret many fans never realized was how revolutionary Lucille Ball truly was behind the scenes. During an era when women rarely held creative power in Hollywood, Ball became one of the most influential figures in television production history. She wasn't simply memorizing lines and performing comedy. She helped shape scripts, approve casting, oversee production decisions, and protect the creative direction of the series. Yet Hollywood often downplayed her business intelligence because studios preferred marketing her as a lovable clown rather than a sharp executive. After Desilu Productions expanded, Lucille Ball eventually became one of the first women to run a major television studio. Under her leadership, Desilu helped launch legendary series like Star Trek and Mission Impossible. But for years, much of Hollywood minimized her influence because powerful women behind the camera made executives uncomfortable. The industry preferred audiences seeing Lucy Ricardo as chaotic and silly rather than recognizing Lucille Ball as one of television's smartest business minds. Perhaps the saddest secret of all was that despite creating one of television's greatest love stories, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz ultimately could not save their real marriage. Years of pressure, emotional pain, exhaustion, and personal struggles slowly pushed them apart. By the late 1950s, the relationship had become deeply strained despite their continued professional success. When the couple finally divorced in 1960, many fans felt genuinely heartbroken because America had emotionally invested in them as the perfect television romance. Yet even after the divorce, Ball and Arnaz reportedly continued loving each other in complicated ways for the rest of their lives. Friends said they remained emotionally connected long after the marriage ended, unable to fully separate the bond they built together through years of struggle and success. In many ways, that bittersweet emotional connection became part of the tragedy behind I Love Lucy. The show captured a fantasy of love, laughter, and happiness that audiences desperately wanted to believe in, even while the real people behind it were quietly falling apart. Today, I Love Lucy remains one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history because the chemistry between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz still feels authentic decades later. And perhaps that authenticity came partly from the fact that beneath the comedy, there were very real emotions, heartbreaks, tensions, and sacrifices hiding behind the cameras.